maybe you know someone like this, where they're never able to really unwind. You guys know anybody? Maybe you are that person, huh? In which case, don't say anything. I don't need to add fuel to your spouse's fire. But maybe let's hypothetically say you know someone who's like this. You go on vacation, and they're already talking about what they're going to do when they get back, what they're going to do the thing after that. I mean, they can't ever just, I'm trying to sit here and enjoy doing nothing, and you're interrupting it by talking. I grew up working construction, and we would have these 12-hour days, and when I got home, I was done. Don't talk to me, don't look at me, don't breathe on me, just leave me alone, okay? I'm going to go to my room, I'm going to play my guitar, you leave me alone, and I'll just live on with my life, and I'll go to bed, right? And my boss, who was also my dad, which I think was a conflict of interest, but even still was a little bit difficult if you ever worked with family members, because you can never really leave the job. You take it home with you quite literally. And so one of his favorite things was to do after a long day of work was to talk about work. And to talk about work for the next day, too, what we're going to do and what we're planning to do for the week after that. And I'm just like, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but please, can we just not talk about this at all? It was his bread and butter. For me, it was more like my canned spinach. Spinach is already gross, but if you guys have ever had the canned stuff, you know the stuff I'm talking about, too, because you open it up, and it has that kind of smell to it, and the kind of juice, I guess, of it, I don't know. It always reminds me of something rotten, and you pour it out, and you're like, I guess this is what I'm eating today. Yeah, fresh is always better. But anyways, that's kind of it was my canned spinach. And the thing with modern living today is we glorify busyness, and we kind of undermine rest. We have a lack of rest in our lives, in our private lives, in our ministry. People love to overwork, and they like to brag about it too. There's no rest at work. There's no rest at home. It's just always this idea of working and running around like crazy. So we're looking at the things that as a church, this is our 100-year anniversary. What do we want to build? What are we building? And we talked about having a legacy. We talked about having a legacy of prayer. We talked about having a legacy of endurance. Today we're going to be talking about having a legacy of rest. Now, obviously, I'm not advocating being lazy and doing nothing. I'm not saying that. But there's a balance between work and, play, and I feel like a lot of times we over-glorify work and what you can accomplish in your life. And, I have to find my purpose, which is always doing something else than whatever I'm doing now. And in that, there's never anything for rest. And life definitely is more than what you offer. Did you know that? We don't talk like that because we talk about what are you going to leave, what are you going to leave your kids, and what are you doing now, and what's your job. When we talk to somebody, when you say, hey, how are you doing, what do you do for a living? It's always about what you're doing. It's not about, resting. Resting. Take it easy every once in a while. And we kind of over-glorify that, and we make it where our life really is nothing more than what we can offer. Once I stop being of value, just let me die, right? So I'm old now. I don't have anything left to offer. Why am I still here? Just put me in a retirement home. I actually talked to a lot of people, and they say something along that lines. They say, "Why am I not dead yet? I just can't figure out why God hasn't taken me." And typically, pastors will give the good Christian answer where you say, "God still has something for you to do." You've probably heard somebody say this, right? And I'm not saying that that's wrong, but roll with me. What if there isn't some big ministry in your future? What if God has simply given you some more years as a gift to enjoy? Is that possible? Is it possible that God might be okay with you not working yourself to death? Is that possible? And people obviously follow that up with a little bit like, nah. And I guess you really can't argue with that. But when we look back, and we're going to start in Genesis, very beginning here, literally. And everybody knows the story, but I think that a lot of times we don't actually stop and kind of process the story. So it starts out with chapter 1, And, I'm just going to give you some spoilers. We're going to summarize some things. If you haven't read Genesis yet, spoiler alert. The first chapter is 6 days of creation. I know everybody talks about the 7 days of creation. It's not 7 days of creation, it's 6 days of creation, 1 day of rest. That's important, but we'll get to that in a second. So the first chapter is just going through the 6 days of creation. And right there, you have a little bit of a because God could have done it all in a day, right? He could have done it all once. He could have snapped his fingers and it's done, right? But he didn't. He didn't. Instead, he used these processes. Even when he's creating humans, humans didn't just appear out of thin air. He took, he molded, he breathed, there they were, right? So there's this process that he's going through. And regardless of how literally you take Genesis 1, we can all still agree that God works by processes. And as he's working, we miss this, and we never ask, why is he doing this in 6 days? Take prayer, for instance. Prayer is a great example. Do you just go to God with your prayer all the time, and you just pray it, and that's just it, it's done? You have it right then because you paid for it? No, of course not. There's a process. God hears you right then, absolutely, but most of the time it doesn't work like this. I prayed and immediately he answered. Normally it's I prayed, I keep praying, there's a process he brought me through. Normally. I mean, he doesn't have to necessarily, but he usually does do that. So then we get to chapter 2, and we hit what seems like a pointless day. This is important, okay? Remember, we gear our whole lives around what we can produce. 6 days, God produced something. We get to a 7th day that seems like a filler. It seems like a waste of time. Keep that in mind. That's important. Chapter 2, verse 1. So the heavens and the earth and everything in them were completed. Okay, let's move on, right? Nope. On the 7th day, why do we need a 7th day? We're done. Moving on, right? On the 7th day, God had completed his work that he had done, and he rested on the 7th day from all his work that he had done. God blessed the 7th day and declared it holy, a special day. For on it he rested from all his work of creation. Now, a lot of times people get a little bit lost. They can't really see the forest for the trees. Holy basically means set apart for a certain purpose. Okay, let's kind of make things more relatable here. So right there, you just told us he finished the thing, and then there's another day, a day of rest, and we're left with the problem of why. Why did God waste his time with the day of rest? This is an important question that we don't really read because we know the story so well, we just kind of read it with our eyes shut, Why? Because he doesn't get tired, so why would he need to take a rest day? So we hop down, and we're going to hop over to Exodus chapter 23, but this actually becomes a whole theme in the Bible, a whole theme. Do your work for 6 days, but rest on the 7th day so that your ox, there we go, so that your ox and your donkey may rest, and the son of your female slave, as well as the resident alien, may be refreshed. Have a day of rest so that people can just stop for a second. So this is a big theme all throughout the Old Testament. It's a huge theme. And the Pharisees were trying to make it a big theme for Jesus too, and he just really wasn't buying it. But that's a conversation for another day. Long story short, a huge theme, and it becomes, a big part of the law. And so we see that God gives us the 7th day as an example to us, and let's kind of remember that it's an example, okay? But follow what that means, okay? I'm trying to say this in a way that you get what I'm trying to, because this is important, and I want to say this in the right way where you get what I'm saying. He gave us an example. The only one who didn't need to do the thing did the thing so that we had an example of doing the thing. Does that kind of make sense? Okay, so roll with me on this. So what is our excuse? See, this is what we do. I'm too busy, I got to do this, I got to do this. Life is all about the things that you do, or else you have no point in life. You all have to do more, you have to be more, you have to say more, you always have to more, right? Never resting in God's goodness, always trying to attain something else. We might have a house. We want something else. We might have a car. We want a newer car. We might have this. We want something else. We're never resting in God's goodness. We're always trying to strive for the next thing. Always something better. Always something bigger. And when we say, well, you really need a break, we always say the same thing. It doesn't matter who you're talking to, the exact same thing. I can't take a break. I'm too busy. I got to do X and Y and Z before I can do that. We always have an excuse. But imagine this. God Almighty showed whatever the opposite of almighty is. Unalmighty humanity, however you would say that, how we should act when he didn't have to act like that. And in so doing, he taught us a valuable lesson that we have ignored ever since. Are you ready for the valuable lesson? Rest is part of creation. Rest is part of creation. This is not something that God introduced because sin was here and we got tired. Before sin entered the equation, rest was placed into the equation. Sin is not what makes us tired. We were made to be at rest at times. That's not to say that we don't get anything done. Oh, absolutely. God gave Adam and Eve something to do, right? Absolutely. However, he also gave them rest, and we have politely ignored it ever since. I would say if there's any sin of, I don't know if you call it a sin of omission or a sin of neglect, whatever you want to say, rest would be that one. You know what I mean? We can talk about, you shouldn't, all the things that the churches tell you shouldn't do. Or we can say, okay, you shouldn't gossip, or you shouldn't lie, or all these things. We have the 10 Commandments. We know all that. We got it covered. But we miss the part about rest. Just rest. And like I say, this is a theme. It keeps being repeated all throughout the Old Testament, and we politely ignore it all throughout the Old Testament. And really, the emphasis in the idea of a time of rest is the purpose of caring. Caring for others, caring for yourself, not pushing people too hard, knowing when to take a step back and say, okay. And there's a lot of things we could talk about the year of Jubilee and the times of rest that God has for the future and all kinds of different stuff. We could talk about that. We're not going to, because I don't want us to focus on the end times and after the end times and all that. We're neglecting it here and now, so let's talk about it here and now. Still, though, as we're talking through the Sabbath, there's some things that inevitably just come up, and that's people will always try to turn the Sabbath into a thing of legalism. They'll go to great lengths to show about how you're not a real Christian, you're not part of the true church if you don't take off of work on Saturday, and Sunday, and if you really feel persnickety about it, they'll bring it up to Saturday and try to tie in the whole Judaism thing to it and make it a whole thing about yet another thing you have to do to be a good Christian. Not understanding that we're free from the law, we don't take a Sabbath rest because of the law. Okay, so just roll with me on this. Let's take it one bit at a time. Mark 2:27 says this, "Then he told them the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. I didn't create the Sabbath for you to observe it. I created the Sabbath so that you would have rest." And so the Pharisees had a way of even turning a good thing like rest into a point of contention. Even a good thing like don't do something, they turned it into a to-do list. Imagine the irony of that. Literally, the day of Sabbath, the day of rest, the day of Sabbath is the idea of don't do something. And they still turned it into do this. People today are still doing the same thing of trying to turn it into a legalistic argument about how if you work on Sunday, you are a bad Christian. Or Saturday. Depends on what church tradition you're in. And I'm definitely not saying out the window with the idea of a Sabbath. I'm not saying that necessarily. Maybe I am. I guess it really depends. But what I am saying is the Bible shows us Jesus as our ultimate rest. Jesus is the Sabbath. He is the fulfillment of the Sabbath. Look how this verse closes up, okay? So then, the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath. even of the Sabbath. Our rest is in him. And he kind of clarified this even more so if you flip over to Matthew 5. He's talking about the law, and people don't really understand what he's saying here. So I'll try to break it down. This is what the verse says. It says, "Don't think that I came to abolish the law or the prophets. I did not come to abolish but to fulfill." This is what he's saying. He's saying, I'm here now. I don't want you thinking that, okay, I'm here, forget everything. Rather, I'm here now, I'm going to live as a Jew, because Jesus lived as a Jew, he lived under the law, so that he could perfectly fulfill the law and bring it to its conclusion. He concluded the law. The law is no longer open-ended. The promises of the law do not apply in the same way that they did back then. Maybe a better way of saying this would be, the Old Testament has to be interpreted through Christ and the New Testament. We can no longer read the Old Testament in isolation of the New Testament, nor can we read the New Testament in isolation of the Old Testament. The New Testament is talking about a next step from the Old Testament as the basis. So with that being said, the idea here is that he didn't come to set aside it, he came to fulfill it, to conclude it. It has been finished. So the law no longer directly applies to us as we are not Jews. However, it is still God's word. It does still reveal morality to us, although keep in mind, not the idea of perfect morality. This is things people get wrong all the time. The law is not how things should be in a perfect world. Did you know that? It's not saying this is how things should be. You know that because the law allowed for having multiple wives. So is it okay to have multiple wives? The law allowed for having slaves. Is slavery okay now? See, the law is not a perfect lens of how morality should be in a perfect world. Rather, it is an opportunity to trust God. And it pointed to our lack of ability to do it ourselves in that Jesus would then fulfill it and we could truly be at rest. But now that we have the full fulfillment, that's a mouthful, of rest, we neglect it and we still try to earn it. I guess it's a vicious cycle. And we live our whole lives, every aspect, we live in this constant, vacuum of trying to be more all the time and trying to do more, and we're always working, always striving. And you might say, well, hold on, should we even then follow the Sabbath? Are you saying we should not follow the Sabbath? Yeah, kind of the opposite. Romans 14:5 says this. One person judges one day to be more important than another day. Someone else judges every day to be the same. Is he saying some people see one day as a Sabbath, some people see every day as a Sabbath? Therefore, as long as you have a Sabbath somewhere. Not necessarily. It's kind of vague, but not necessarily. Let's keep going. Let each one be fully convinced in his own mind. So this is the point of what I'm saying. If you're going to still have the whole Sabbath day thing, fine. Do as you feel led, but be submitted to Christ in it. And don't try to make yourself higher and mightier than another Christian who isn't seeing it like that. For me, I no longer see it as a Sabbath day. I see it as every day is holy to the Lord. Every day is. To me, it's no different. And I'll tell you I'll tell you an example. Probably the worst day for pastors is usually Sunday. The number one day that pastors quit is Monday morning. They finish up Sunday, they are tired, they get up Monday morning, and then they say, bye, board, find yourself a new pastor. This is a thing that actually happens. They quit. Monday, number one thing. So with that being said, it wasn't really a day of Sabbath for that pastor, was it? See what I mean? So if it really was hell-bent on such and such a day, well, then basically you guys are helping me to sin by us having church every Sunday. Or Saturday, however you want to say it. I don't really feel the need of being contentious about stuff. So let me just say that right here. If you're one of those people who likes to be contentious about stuff, and it was originally Saturday. Yes, I understand originally, historically, Jews celebrated on the Sabbath, but it really doesn't, on the Saturday. But it doesn't matter, once again, because we're not under the law. So it's kind of a pointless little argument, and I don't really want to get sidetracked on that. The main point being, we need rest. So if you hop over to Colossians 2:16, it says this, therefore, don't let anyone judge you in regard to food and drink. We got that. Actually, we still stumble over that, don't we? Or in the matter of a festival or a new moon or a Sabbath day. Or a Sabbath day. The whole thing about being contentious is not something we should be known as. So I would say, yeah, really do as you feel led. It's really not that big of an issue. It's not something that you have to fear the wrath of God. Here's the thing with that. If God specifically tells you not to work on a certain day, don't work on that day. Don't be greedy. I have countless stories of business people who I did not say this. They came to me and said this. They say, I stopped working on Sunday and my business prospered. I have not said that. They said it. I am simply relaying that information to you. Take that for however it is. I have noticed that God will do more for the churches of pastors when they take the time to step back rather than trying to always do everything and be everything for everybody. Kind of make sense? So, once again, I don't really think it's necessarily the idea of which day you have a rest, but rather the idea that you obey God and rest. Do you get the difference? One is, as long as I have this day. The other one is, I am trying to seek God more in my life. There's a difference there. Did not mean to go that long on that. But there's still going to be people who are disgruntled that you are not living under the law of Moses. Did you know that? No matter what you do in life, there's going to be some people who are disgruntled that you're not a good enough Christian because you're not under the law of Moses. You know how I know that? Because they did that before Jesus, they did that to Jesus, and they did it to Paul and Peter too. In fact, if you read in Acts, you can read about, and Galatians, you can read about, well, some other places too, but focus here. Focus, Michael, come on. You can read about the way that they were always trying to make people Jews before they could be Christians. They need to be circumcised before they do this. They need to do this before they do this. And basically, they had a whole council about it. It's recorded in Acts like 15 or so. And basically what they said is, look, don't eat meat sacrificed to idols if people are watching. If it's going to be an issue and it's going to cause a conflict, just don't do it. It wasn't even an issue of sin. It was a matter of just avoid the whole problem. Don't do it around them. So if you're eating meat, just don't ask and just eat it. But if somebody brings it up and is brought up, well, then don't do it just because these other people, right? And those were the only things they really said. And there were a lot of other things they could have been contentious about, but they weren't. So no matter what you do, there's going to be people around you who convict you. Okay? You heard me? Okay. I tell you that because we always get surprised. Oh, people are still condemning me. There will always be people to condemn you. People literally condemn Jesus Christ. Think about that, how wild that is. They're definitely going to condemn you too. So don't worry too much about that. But we have a greater Sabbath rest coming. I've mentioned that. But it does start right now. Look at Hebrews, for instance. It says, therefore, a Sabbath rest remains. It remains for God's people, not just in the future, but right now. For the person who has entered his rest has rested from his own works, just as God did from his. Let us then make every effort to enter that rest, so that no one will fall into the same pattern of disobedience. And the bigger thing here, if you come to Wednesday nights, you already know where I'm going with this, but the big reason that the Sabbath is still open is because the seventh day of Genesis never ended. And every single one of the days, except for the Sabbath, it says evening, morning, the end of the first day. Evening, morning, the end of the second day. The seventh day never says that. It just says, and then there was a seventh day, and God rested from all his labors. Moving on, the day never ended. The day of rest never ended. That's why in the law, the Jews were told to repeat the day of rest. Okay, so what does that mean for us? Well, actually, it means a lot. First off, we can very clearly see that God wants us to have a legacy of rest in our lives. He wants us to be people at rest in him. At rest. This is why Satan wants you to worry so much, is because if he can get you to get your mind just going, your mind is not at rest. It doesn't matter if we're talking about politics, if we're talking about a house issue, like a conflict in your household, if we're talking about work problems, it doesn't matter what we're talking about. As long as you're worried about it, your brain is not resting in him. You're thinking about it, worrying about it. And Jesus even says, what's the good of that? How many of you can add, depending on how you translate it, a single moment to your life? Obviously, none of us. So we're still in that seventh day of the seventh day of rest. So that means basically there's four things that I want to specify of what that means. The first thing is working for salvation. The first area of rest is in working for salvation. Now, this is twofold. We think of it in one term, but let's consider the Jews, for instance, who had to do certain animal sacrifices and all these other things of purification in order to observe their faith. Okay? Now, remember, those sacrifices did not save them. Doing the thing, blood sacrifices never saved anyone. However, God received it on their behalf as faith and obedience. Okay? So, keep that in mind. But then today, we wouldn't say it like that. Today, we don't really sacrifice animals. They do in certain places. In America. What we do is we kind of try to supplement our faith. Basically, I'll be saved if I believe and whatever the and is. If I believe and am baptized, then I am saved. If I believe and do good works, then I am saved. And we take these certain verses out of context to kind of back up that argument. And so in that way, we make it a thing of, I have to believe in Jesus and. Faith and obedience. And I think a lot of times we all feel like this to a certain degree. Like, yeah, I'm saved, but I still have to do the things, right? Which brings us to the second area of rest that we have. And that's working to keep our seat. Not only do we think we have to work to get a seat at the table, we also think that we have to work to keep our seat at the table. And it looks something like this. Well, I got to keep growing. I got to keep going to church and reading my Bible and praying. I got to do all these things so that way God won't be mad at me and I won't lose my salvation. I have to dress right as a Christian. I have to talk right as a Christian. I have to be a light. I'm always a witness, so my marriage has to be a witness to people. How I live, how I conduct myself at work. I always have to be, all the time, I have to be a light to the world, and I'm always witnessing with everything that I do. I can never have an off day. I can never trying to earn that salvation. Well, God let me in the door, but now I have to keep my place there by making sure that my life is good enough. I have to make sure that I am good enough because I might lose my salvation. God might be mad at me. And we get to a place where we start doing things for Him, but not really doing things with Him. And we kind of lose sight. It's always about the work of the kingdom, never really about being in the kingdom. You know what I mean? And so we're doing all these things, and we think we're doing good, but really what we're doing is we're losing touch. We're losing touch with the master, and rather doing a bunch of things that we think will get us brownie points with the master. We don't really want him to comment either. We just want him to kind of come, bless us, pat us on the head, tell us we're doing a good job, then go back to whatever he's doing so we can go back to whatever we're doing. So that takes us to the third area of rest that we find. And that's rest from a crowded life. This is the one that people don't see. It's like a subtle killer. It is killing you. Not just spiritually, but mentally and emotionally. It is destroying your life. And we just totally think it's normal and fine because that's how we do things. The crowded life. It's a life that is too busy to even enjoy. A life that always fits in more activities instead of making time for the quiet. Just making time to just chill out. Calm down, take a step back. It's a life that doesn't have time for that because I have to make sure to do enough so that when I die, I can stand in front of God and say, but look what I did. Are you proud of me now? I think sometimes we go to God with our insecurities instead of going to Him in truth. And I think this is one of the reasons why Jesus said, they'll worship me in spirit and truth, not in Jerusalem. And it's a total switch, and I think that Adrian Rogers is a pastor. I think he said it probably the best. If Satan can't make you bad, he'll make you busy. He'll make you busy. I don't have time to sit and rest. I got too much important stuff to do. There's more stuff, and I got to do it all myself. Because if I'm not going to do it, it's not going to get done. And who knows? You might be true. You might be right. Who knows? That doesn't mean that you shouldn't take a break and chill out for a little bit. It's all right. But what even is rest? Well, we'll get to that in a second. Don't get ahead of me. Sometimes we even treat our busyness like it's a trophy we carry. I only got 2 hours of sleep last night. Ooh, look at me. Look at how much coffee I have to drink. And it's like it's almost like a pride thing, you know. I did this, and then I had to run over there and do this and do this. And it's like, well, you know, that's really nothing to be proud of. You're overworking yourself, and you went like, oh, look at me. I'm so much better than you because I'm wearing myself out. I'm going to die at 40 years old because I don't know how to just sit down and calm down for a second. Yeah, he died of a heart attack at 37. I don't even know what happened there. How do you deal with stress? How do you deal with ministry failures and all these different things? I don't know. We don't really have time to process. You just got to keep going. Take it like this. A pastor who gets burnt out and he tries to take a step back, well, what about the rest of the church? He can't just step back. People who go too hard in their life and they have to be institutionalized because they're so stressed out from everything. Oh, well, you know, they're just a whack job. You know, they're just mental psychos. You know, it doesn't matter for the years that they stood the line. It matters that they broke. But Jesus showed us a better cycle. It looks something like this. If you know something stressful is coming up, rest before the stressful thing. Jesus rested for 30 years and then he did ministry for 3. Rest before the stressful thing. Second thing Jesus did, if you're in a stressful situation, rest during the stressful thing. Don't wait for it to be over. Because we do this. I'm fine now, so I don't need to rest. Then something stressful comes up. Well, I can't rest now because there's something going on. So when are you going to rest? But look what Jesus did. He's in a boat in the storm that's going crazy all around him. What's he doing? He's sleeping. He's resting. Sometimes we're, God, why aren't you answering me? So basically, God has to have ADHD because you can't sit still. Because you can't endure the storm. You think you have to be doing something. My kids aren't serving you, so I need to be doing something. I need to be saying all the things. I need to... So then, we can't sit still, so we just assume that God has to not sit still either. And if he does sit still, then he just doesn't love you, or he's a mile away, or he's just not talking to you. Or maybe he's waiting for you to change gears and realize you don't have to do everything right now. We do this thing, we institute imaginary timelines. I have to get this done by this time. Or what? Well, it's going to mess up with it. Can you reschedule it? Well, yeah, but my boss will... Well, if you can't do it, you can't do it. What do you want, for more data to appear out of thin air? Like, you can't. Everybody only has 24 hours in a day. Like, that's all you get. Like, that's it. You can't make more appear. The third way Jesus did it, so he rested before, he rested during, he also rested after. In fact, one story sticks out to me in particular, where he's out ministering to people and you think this is probably his bread and butter. He's all kinds of happy and excited. The ministry's over. He's going to go home and say, well, I did a good job. If you've ever done ministry, you know that that's not what happened. You get done ministry and you're tired. You're tired. And people want more. It's like, oh, leave me alone. People call you on your phone. You're just like, I was sleeping. Yeah, I don't really do that, okay? I'm just But what does Jesus do? He says, okay, you guys go ahead across the boat. I'm going to go alone by myself. Leave me alone. He didn't even take his disciples with him. Rest was a very important part of Jesus' life, and yet we don't observe it. Rest before the thing, during the thing, and after the thing. The fourth thing here, the fourth area of rest, is he gives us rest from a hollow ministry. And how do we get hollow ministry? From just doing too much ministry. We're doing. What is the first thing that somebody goes to a new church? What is it? How can we get you involved? How can we get you to do more things? It doesn't matter how burned out you are, how tired, how bad your last church experience was. That doesn't matter. Just as long as we get to sign you up for another ministry so that we can continue to have 500 different ministries and everybody's busy all the time and nobody gets to actually enjoy being at church. Have you been into that kind of situation where nobody is actually enjoying being at the church because you're always doing something? We call that a cult. That's what Jonestown did. That was not a good thing. That's not the thing to strive for. But every church has it in their head. We need to have 14 different ministries. Why? Why do you need to have 4? Because we need to hit every single different. No, why? Why do you need to do that? This is not a show. It's not a look how many goods we can package to you for your purchase and consumption. This is a church. It's not that. But yet we work ourselves down to the bone. Too much ministry, not enough being ministered to. Now, to use my wife as an example for just a minute, which I normally don't like doing, but I think that's important. My wife does this thing where she doesn't want, it's not that she doesn't want to say no. That's not the thing. It's that she sees a need. She sees that it needs to get done. Well, let's do that. So I have to consciously tell her, hold on. Don't sign up for any more. Pray about it for at least 2 weeks, okay? Take it easy. You don't have to be running. And we've been at that situation before, especially Gracie, poor thing, where we were at a church and she was doing so much and she never ever got to just come and be ministered to. We'll move on. Always doing ministry, never being ministered to. And this is where Satan gets us. The things that you'll do aren't bad things. It's just out of balance. That's it. It's not a bad thing. It's not like Satan's leading you to, go to the back alley and do cocaine. It's good things. It's just out of balance. It's out of balance. You're not even enjoying the ministry anymore. Did you know that ministry can be fun? You didn't know that if you've been in one of those churches. You think it's always work. It's always more, always. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do anything and sit on your butt all day and just watch TV. I didn't say that, okay? I didn't say that. That's not even rest anyways. That's stress. That's more stress. You're going to watch TV all day and you're going to think, man, this is tough. It's like, for instance, if I want to have a nice day off, I'm not going to go see Snow White, the new Snow White in theaters. I'm already stressed about things. I don't need any more of that in my life. I don't. I don't need it. The things we're going to watch are stupid things. We're going to go watch Sonic the Hedgehog 3, It's stress-free, a little blue hedgehog running around. That sounds like a good idea to me. And, we're going to watch something silly like that. I'm not going to go and watch something that's going to get me more and more irritated. If you read fantasy books, you'll see that a lot of fantasy books nowadays, they're basically saying, they're making a political commentary on whoever their candidate isn't. That's just their whole, and they're not even sly about it anymore. It's just like, okay, we get it. You don't like such and such. Moving on. But anyways, this idea of always doing ministry, never being ministered to, and they're not bad things. It's just out of balance, and you never have time to really get your head on straight. And we're always doing something. We're told that that's the way it's good. It's to do. It's good. But we're never not serving. And if you're never not serving, how in the world are you possibly going to get a chance to recharge your batteries? Even the idea we were told you had to be in church every single time the doors are open, which is fine if that's what you want to do. But the problem is you had to be at church every single time the doors were open, and then you had to do something for the service. And so you couldn't actually be there to be ministered to. And then you were kind of guilt-tripped. And if you went on vacation, you should feel guilty. You missed a Sunday. Pastor will remember. God will remember. And then, if you were sick, well, you come hell or high water, or you're a bad Christian. And it's like, well, what if we don't want you to get everybody else sick, though? So now you're in a little bit of a moral dilemma because either God's mad at you for skipping or, Sister Bethel is mad at you for getting her sick. Well, what do you do now? Lose-lose situation, I tell you what. And unfortunately, I'm a group of people who are the biggest perpetrators of this, pastors. Pastors are world-renowned for their ability to overwork Christians. We are just master classes at this. A lot of times you go to a church and the pastor will lay on the guilt so thick you can't even, okay, fine, I'll do it, just leave me alone. I have a completely different approach. This is my approach. If we don't have enough people to do the thing, we'll cancel the thing. Do you hear what I just said? We don't have enough people to do the thing, cancel it. A lot of times I'll do ministry in such a way where I call it dumbed down ministry. It's where it's as easy as humanly possible, where you only need a skeleton crew to make it happen. See what I mean? And when you're doing things for kids, they won't even know that you're doing that. But you'll know because you'll be able to get better sleep at night. You're like, I didn't work myself so hard. I always say, and I hope you guys hear me on this because I'm not just simply saying it, go with your conscience. Okay? When you're giving in money to the church, give with your conscience. When you're signing up for something to do in the church, go with your conscience. Don't do it out of compulsion. Do it as you feel led. And if you feel led to do a certain thing, then do it. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't be faithful to the thing. If you're going to sign up for an ongoing thing, yes, you should be faithful to it. But I also don't think that you should have a life sentence that you have to do it for the rest of your life and you don't ever get an out. Oh, you signed up for it back in 1974, and so now, this is who you are now. This is what you do. And let's pray to God you never mess, because then you have to have a lecture of not being faithful. And I don't think that that's a very good model. But honestly, here's the thing. This kind of makes sense, though. We don't really understand salvation. So we pass on to other people that their value is based on what you produce. How dare you be at a church and not produce anything? So, even to make it more cultural, men deal with this all the time. Right? Women, they don't have to have something valuable to offer in a marriage. Guys fall in love with them because they're gorgeous. Women are wonderful in everything that they do. They smell nice, they look nice, they're great. Men, not so much. We're smelly, we stink, we're grouchy, we just aren't real fun, we tend to be dirty. We're just not really the cream of the crop. We can't get you with, like, lipstick and eyeliner. I hope we can't get you with lipstick and eyeliner. Let me paraphrase. But with that being said, men are only valuable so long as we can give something. When we take people out to dates, who pays for it? We do. When we come home, we've got to work hard, right? So that way we have a place in our house. The amount of men that I talk to that are so discouraged. This is an ongoing thing. And you could say it's upbringing. I don't think it is. There's just something in us as men that we think our only value is if we can contribute something. Makes it very, very difficult to deal with things. So each day is holy to the Lord, regardless of how you see the Sabbath, which means that it's a day to seize, which means that we shouldn't just be honoring God with our work, we should be honoring God with our rest. Honor God with your rest. So what about Jesus? He didn't take a vacation. Two quick things. Number one, he didn't take a vacation that we know of. He was on a very short time frame. He took 30 years and then he did 3. So keep things in perspective here. However, the Gospels don't record every single moment of his life. So who knows? Maybe he did take a vacation. I don't know. The Bible doesn't say every single thing that he did. Second thing off, Jesus lived at a time when there was a much slower pace of life. You didn't get in your phone get in your car while the kids are screaming in the backseat, while you're on the phone, while the radio's going, while people are rushing around you. You're driving from one coast to another coast in a couple of days. That wasn't Jesus. That wasn't what Jesus did. Okay? He didn't do that. In fact, if you read through, not just him, but Paul too, there is just a lot of dead time that's happening. In the Gospels and in Acts, a lot of dead time. A lot of dead time. Whereas nothing's really going on. But nowadays, and this is the conundrum, we are more productive as human beings as we've ever been, ever in history. We're able to do so much, get so much stuff done. Of course, we don't. We sit on Facebook all day. But we have the ability to be productive, more so than ever before. And so you think that we'd be happy? No, actually, we're less happy than ever before. And what's even more crazy is that we're more busy than ever before. So we're productive, but still more busy and not happy. There's always going to be something else. So how do you rest? Think about this. How do you rest? Well, most of us are going to say something like this. Well, I go home, I crash on my couch, and I watch some trash TV. Wheel of Fortune or something. I don't know. Just something. I don't know. Whatever. You're going to go home and crash, and that's how I'm going to spend my day. And then you feel worse than you did when you started. You came home to get rest, and you feel worse. And this is what you do if you're anything like me. You sit there and you think about all the things you have to do on your days off. You feel guilty that you're resting when there's other things that need to get done. You ever feel guilty when you're resting? Yeah, most people do. And there's never enough time, no matter if you get 1 day off, you needed 2 days. If you take a week off of vacation, you needed 2 weeks. If you need a month off, you needed 2 months. It doesn't matter what you get, you needed more, whatever it is. So how in the world do you genuinely rest? Because here's the thing, they'll be mad at me if I rest. If I'm not being profitable, they'll be mad at me. Because you got to be fixed all the time in good order, never having a misstep. As you can see, a lot of the problem is self-inflicted harm. So let's move on. There are 3 big differences with rest that I want to highlight very quickly. First off, there's going to be different kinds of rest for different ages. Grandparents are not going to rest in the same way that a teenager would. You have to understand, where are you at in life? Okay? Then there's different kinds of rest for different sexes. Men and women are not going to do the same things. And I know we all have dreams and fantasies of, I'm going to stay at home on my fluffy couch and my husband's going to come and spend the whole day with me and we're just going to sit there, and maybe he'll do one to take one for the team. But I'm telling you right now, 9 out of 10 times, husbands and wife are not going to be on the same page about how to find that rest. Okay? So when your husband's having a day off and he's going around doing stuff, it's going to stress you out. I get that. I agree. However, that's maybe how he finds his rest. I don't know. I'm not him. See what I mean? Different sexes, different things. Men typically like to do something. They like to get something accomplished. This is why when men take time off, they're more likely to either do a project that they've been wanting to do, not the honey-do list. I'm talking about their own project, or play video games or something like that gives them a sense of accomplishment. And then the third rest difference that I want to mention is there are different kinds of rest, generally speaking. There's spiritual rest, there's physical rest. And when we go to have a day off rest, we never ask ourselves, what type of rest are we going for? Am I trying to get physical rest? Am I trying to get emotional rest? Am I trying to get spiritual rest? We don't know. So then we're not able to give ourselves what we actually need, and we don't get the rest because we gave rest in the wrong area. See, I sat on the couch all day when I didn't need physical rest. My body's doing fine. It's my mind. It's been going a million miles an hour. It needs a rest. And so TV's not really going to do much to help you with that. It's not. Especially not the news. I think a much better place to start is, which one do you need at this time? Very quickly, I want to talk about those areas of rest. Physical rest is the one that everybody hates doing, because your body needs a break and your mind doesn't. So your mind is still going a million miles, but your body is like twitching out. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I just got out of surgery. Bed rest for 6 weeks. How about 4.5? I'll give you 4.5. Now, don't walk on that knee or that foot, either or, depending where, for X amount of time. How about a week? I'll give you a week. You know what I mean? And but physical rest is important. The problem is, physical rest is the most obvious to notice, so it's the only one we really take for granted, you know what I mean? Really pay attention to. But it takes a really long time to heal, and rather than seeing how it just takes a long time to heal, we get mad at the process, and we want it to happen overnight. Ever been to physical therapy? 8 months later. 8 months later. Shoo, you laugh about it, you're going to cry. The other type of rest is spiritual. Spiritual rest is very much so neglected. It's the one that we don't realize that we need. Because we say something like this, I'm not a religious person, or I'm not spiritual, whatever. And however you want to word that, and you need that, but you don't know that you need that. So you feel like this kind of restlessness in your soul. You know what I mean? And like inside, and you're like, I need something. I don't know what it is. Your emotions go a little bit weird, and you're just kind of trying to figure things out, and you just don't really even know how do I do this. And that's, I guess, the funny thing about spiritual rest. Spiritual rest is super easy. Prayer, scripture, fasting. Super easy. You would think rest means doing nothing, but rest means holding back from the work. So another way of spiritual rest, hear me on this, step back from a ministry for a certain amount of time. Ever tried it? It'll do wonders. Sometimes people go too hard for too long. But what we do instead during our spiritual time, we get on our phones. Because we're addicted to our phones and we don't think that it's an addiction. So we'll sit there scrolling. We go to bed at 9 o'clock and then we stay scrolling till 1 o'clock and we don't wonder why we're tired all the time. Well, gee, I wonder why. I don't know. Maybe God will give you a revelation on that. The third thing is emotional. Now, here's the thing. People always give you the biggest blowback with emotional rest. Avoid the news. If you need emotional rest, don't watch the news. And this is where people get mad. I don't want to be ignorant of what's going on. I hear you. But you can't have bad news thrown in your face 24/7 and be okay. We were not created to carry that much trauma. So whereas it's good that the world is so interconnected, it's bad for your mind. Super bad for your mind. Maybe limit your time to maybe 20 minutes of the news one day a week or something like that. Give yourself a break. Honestly, realistically. I mean, obviously, Todd can't join us on this one because that's kind of his job. But there are still points that you can do that kind of give yourself a little bit of rest from it. Try to avoid the news. Another thing is we live in a culture, and back me up on this, where you have to have an opinion on everything. You have to care about everything. And it'll be the dumbest things, but everybody is so riled about it. There was this accusation made that so and such did such and such a thing, so you better have a side, and it better be that person is definitely right, even though there's zero evidence. Okay, I don't really necessarily feel comfortable with that, but then you're a bad person. It's like, okay, well, I don't really like how this is going. This conversation kind of seems like it's one-sided, and it happens all the time. And so then you're expected, especially people who have online presences, you're expected to have a voice on these things. Ravi Zacharias was an apologist, wrote a lot of very important books. After he died, it came out that he had, some kind of sexual activity with a number of women. It was not good situation. It was very, very bad. I don't want to get into all of it. And there was proof, and yes, it actually did happen. So then everybody got on the wagon of, okay, now I need to, as an apologist, I need to come out and say that I condemn Ravi Zacharias for what he did. We didn't really need that, though, did we? I mean, we already understood it was bad, right? We don't need everybody getting up on their high horse. And yet this is exactly what our culture tells us. You're not a racist, are you? So you better get up there and announce to the world that you're not racist. You don't stand with this thing. Just take a step back. Honestly, the world will be okay without your opinion for a little bit. This is one of the most liberating things I can ever tell you as a Christian. The world doesn't need your opinion on everything all the time. It's okay. You can walk away. You can keep your mouth shut. It's okay. On Facebook, you don't have to go on Facebook rants. You can go on a comment on YouTube and see somebody say something stupid and keep scrolling. And this is what we say, but I'm being a light. I'm telling them the truth. I'm spreading the gospel. No, you're not. You're starting a fight and then moving on. That's all you're doing. That's not how the gospel is really spread. Gospel is always spread by one-on-one interaction in the flesh. You don't need social media presence to spread the gospel. You need to go out and spread the gospel. Total difference. Total difference. It also amazes me that in the New Testament, never once do we see people witnessing by their lifestyle. But yet nowadays, the number one way that you are stressed is because you're not living a good enough example as a Christian. It just blows me away. Blows me away. Let's finish up here. There's just a few other things we got to get through. But for emotional rest, try to find something you enjoy doing or talk to people. And you don't have to talk about the thing, but you don't have to sit in your house crying either. I mean, there is another thing you can do. And then also, and I feel like a lot of times pastors don't really mention this, but I feel like I would be at fault if I didn't mention this. Exercise. Go for a walk. You know how many times I hear people, they're stressed out. Have you tried going for a walk? No, I'd much rather sit in my house crying and worrying about this than having panic attacks. Okay. That doesn't sound like a good option. Exercise. The second thing is eat right. For real, eat right. You cannot constantly be eating processed junk all the time and then feel good all the time. It's not going to happen. You're not in control of your emotions? Try changing what you're putting inside the tank. I mean, these are things that don't sound spiritual, but they really are. And what we do is we'd rather pray and ask God to bless the trash that we're eating than change what we're eating. Have you ever noticed that people, God, anoint this food, or, bless it as I consume it, and give it the nutritional value? It's McDonald's. There's zero nutritional value. It's literally fat and carbs, and your body doesn't need any of it because it's not even real carbs anyways. Like, you don't need it. You ate there because it's a guilty pleasure. Be honest with yourself. Another thing is meditation. Meditation is overlooked because of the New Age movement, and so I'm just going to give you a couple tips on meditation. Meditation is where you are thinking about something. So most broadly, meditation is anything that you're doing all day anyways. You're either meditating about politics, or about a problem, or about your spouse or something. That's meditation. Meditation is you're fixating on something, okay? Maybe over-fixating, but still fixating. I think that's where you kind of get into the OCD area. But anyways, if you've never meditated before, this is a simple method that I use. First off is I stop thinking about something. Just don't think about anything. Now, women right now are looking at me thinking, how do you do that? Guys, in the meantime, we can turn off our brains and literally think about nothing. I'll do it right now for you. Ready? And I'm back. Didn't think about a single thing. Men can do it at will whenever they want. It's amazing. It's like a superpower. Women have a much harder time. Have been some women that have been able to, but most of the time they say, how do you do that? So that's going to be something you do with practice maybe. Then after I've kind of stopped thinking about stuff, I go to the next stage, which is kind of distracting yourself. So maybe listening to music or counting. I'm a big fan of counting. Just I count my breaths in, I count my breaths out. It doesn't have to be something important, just something to think about something else than what you were thinking about. You know what I mean? When you're waiting in line for surgery, your mind is gonna be consumed. You can't just go into meditation. You can take steps to fool yourself to go into meditation. See what I'm saying? So after you've kind of distracted yourself, then I go to the next stage, which is where you actually meditate. I start thinking about Scripture, start thinking about God, maybe some of His attributes, maybe how He acted in a certain story in the Bible. You're meditating. You're thinking about it. And then after you're here, something that can help in conjunction with all this is deep breathing. Have you ever tried just deep breathing? Sometimes we think the world is ending, and all you really need to do is calm down and breathe. So yes, absolutely do. You should be doing the work of the ministry, but remember that it could be said that the pastor who does everything except for pray really doesn't do anything as a pastor. And a pastor who does nothing but prayer really does everything as a pastor. Do you know what I mean? And what I mean by that isn't that you shouldn't be doing things, but just that God's value system is a lot different than our value system, and things aren't really done by the work of your own hands. And I'll just move on from there, because I really want to wrap things up here. I got like 4 lines left, guys. Can we make it through? Can you fall? Can we go for 10 more minutes without falling asleep? Can you give me 10? 11. I heard you. He said 11. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm joking. So something that I do is something that the law, if you look at the law teaches us this. All throughout the Old Testament, it teaches us this. Make time every day for Sabbath rest. Every day. Okay? This would be what we call in a modern audience, we call it your daily devotional, or your devotion time. Your closet time, your prayer closet. Use whatever word you want to use. A daily Sabbath rest. Then have a weekly Sabbath rest. So parts of a day, parts of a week. Monthly, have a monthly Sabbath time. Yearly, have yearly Sabbath times. And when you look through the law, it's all through there. You can go read it for yourself. I mean, there's just too many scripture references to go, but you get what I'm saying. And in all these things, remember as you're resting that your body needs different rest at different times. So maybe give your mind a break by reading something that's completely different and it doesn't have to do with your problem or your job. Give your body a break by maybe going to the gym and maybe skipping a day and going to the gym and skipping a day, something like that, to where your body just kind of gets... your body needs that pressure to it, not just doing nothing, but also doing something to it. It needs that back and forth. Give your spirit a break. Instead of, always worrying about the things, just think about how good God is. I'm not saying avoid your problems and pretend like they don't exist, but just give yourself a little bit of a break. Sometimes, though, and I will say this, because I don't know if men do this too, because I mostly experienced it from women. I don't know. But stop and ask yourself really quickly, are you in a hopeless situation or are you hangry? So many marital conflicts are caused by a wife just needing a snack. I'm telling you, before you start getting too irritated and, at your spouse, try getting them a pretzel. I mean, it can do wonders. They really can. You'd be surprised. Low blood sugar can make you act a little crazy. So is it really a hopeless thing? There's actually a story in the Bible that I think we see this perfectly. There's this prophet Elijah, and he has this great victory. He's living on cloud nine. He's hooray. And then he gets some bad news, and he's just like, why am I even alive? God, just go ahead and take my life. I'm done. He went from woohoo to suicide in the matter of just a little bit of time. So he gets down, and God doesn't say a thing. He drags him out to the middle of the desert, gives him some food, and has him sleep. Does that for a couple of days, and then says, go do that over there. Just sends him somewhere else. Sometimes you don't really need much except for a nap, a snack, and get your mind off of it. The world isn't ending. You're just tired. It's all right. Sometimes it's as simple as that. And even if it's not that simple, if you are tired, whatever you're going through is going to be 100 times worse. It's like if you're anxious and overthink things, it's going to be worse. And I will say two more things. Well, remember, I said 4 lines. We're down to 2 lines. We're really making time now. Once you're free from doing things out of guilt, it is so much more rewarding. Once you can stop reading the Bible to make a certain quota, reading the Bible every day so that I'm a good enough Christian, praying every day and not skipping, not missing anything, I'm such a better Christian that way. Once you can get past doing ministry and doing all these things from guilt and shame, and instead you can just do them because you love the Lord, man, oh man, is it so much more rewarding. It is a difference of night and day. It's good if you want to read through the Bible in a year, but if you're a slow reader, which is better? And you tell me. Is it better to read 1 chapter of the Bible and think about it for 3 days? Or is it better to read 5 chapters of the Bible every single day and have no idea what you just read? You tell me. You be the judge. So as we're wrapping these things up, yes, without guilt, everything is more rewarding. The last thing I think that we really need to say about rest, and this is absolutely essential. If you tuned out and you just now came awake, I understand. But this is the part that you should really remember. Don't ask God to give you rest and peace and calm if you're not going to obey his instructions to rest. Did you hear what I just said? Because this is what we do. You get yourself in a situation, you say like this, God, give me peace and calm. I'm not going to do anything to obey you and rest during my life. But now that I'm in need, give me peace and calm right now. I don't want to work for it. I don't want to learn how to rest in you. I want you to fix me. And so every single time I'm going to get myself in the same situation because I overstress myself, and then you have to pick me up every single time. I refuse to learn the lesson. There comes a point when you say, okay, it's not wrong to pray to God, but maybe walk in obedience and rest. You guys are not nodding with me. Maybe obey God and rest. Maybe you are more than what you can bring to the table. Maybe you are more than what you can bring to the table. Rest. You don't know how much the past couple Sundays have just been so spot on, where I was going to preach about something else. God told me to preach about something different than what I was going to preach, and it just perfectly hit what people are going through. It's amazing how that works, isn't it? God just really has a way. So if you're sitting here thinking, I need rest, yeah, I think that God knew that, but don't worry, I didn't tailor this message to attack somebody here. I don't do that kind of stuff. We were actually going to talk about something totally different, but this was what we were going to talk about. We were talking about prayer, and then we're going to go straight off to some other things, some very important things that are now like pushed off for a couple months, because God had us in prayer for like 6 weeks or some nonsense, something that I definitely did not plan for. And then he had us go to endurance, which I had way later in the year. And then he had us go, which some things happened this week for a lot of different people, that endurance is right on. And then now we're at, rest. So I think that maybe God might be trying to teach you something, okay? I hope that you're listening so that he doesn't have to take you any further in a hard road. You can learn it easier. Because you're already going to have to go through the hard things. But if you learn to rest, I think it's going to be a lot easier for you. Okay? Really, it's not so insurmountable if you can just rest. Okay? Just rest. So join me in prayer, please. We're not gonna have an altar call today. I think this is one of those times that God just wants you to kind of be weighing it in your spirit. So that's what we're gonna do. We're just gonna kind of sit here for a minute and give you some time to think about this. Maybe something you need to start doing. Maybe just simply figuring out what kind of rest your body needs. Lord, speak to our hearts and speak to our minds. Lord, I have no doubt in my mind that this message was definitely something that you intended. So God, I just pray you'd help us to pick up what we need to pick up. Lord, speak in hearts, speak in minds. Here we just draw us, God. As God's speaking to you, maybe get a piece of paper and write it down so you don't forget, because you will forget. Maybe something special that God just wants you to know, or something God wants you to focus on. This is how God is leading you into further growth. He doesn't want you stressing about the things you did wrong in the past or glorying in the things you did right. He wants you resting in Him. Lord, I pray you'd bless this church. Lord, I pray you'd guide them to a place of rest. Lord, help them to walk in peace. Help them to know peace intimately. Lord, that you'd bring calm. That their anxiety and their nerves would just diminish. That all the things that seem so important, Lord, they just fall by the wayside. Lord, that you'd start taking off those pieces of weight. They're like heavy pieces of armor that you have strapped around your body, trying to protect yourself with all the weight. And God's just telling you to untie the knot. Let the weight go. You don't need that armor that you're holding on to. What you need is God's armor. And it won't weigh a single piece. It won't weigh as much as a single penny. You don't need to defend yourself. You need to let God defend you. You don't need to keep walking in your insecurity. You need to hand it over to God. Be secure in Christ. Be secure in what Christ has done. You don't have to be enough. He is enough. You don't have to keep striving. He's already done it. As He said, it is finished. It is finished. Let Him lead you to a place that you've never been. He wants to lead you to a place that you've never walked this way before. A place of rest. A place without guilt and shame. A place of peace. Lord, bless this church in all their ways as they acknowledge you. As they seek after you in all your ways, God. Help them to know you more. Lord, bless them. Let their sleep be sweet, that they would wake up refreshed. They'd have calm throughout their days. Lord, bless them, anoint them for the route ahead. We love you, Lord. Amen. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you.